In this lecture, we will talk about Introduction to Repositories, also known as repos. Think of repos like your playlist. You can download free or purchase songs in your playlist and play them when you want. Similarly, repositories store free or purchase software that you can install and use. When using CentOS or similar open source distros, you will have access to open source repositories which contain free software, patches, and updates. On the other hand, when you use Red Hat Enterprise Linux or SUSE Linux, you purchase a subscription, which provides you with software, patches, and updates. When you install a specific software, it comes from a specific repository. When you yum install a particular software, such as VSFTPD, your system looks for VSFTPD in a repository. This repo may be online, locally stored, or on your network somewhere. In CentOS, etc yum.repos.d is the directory where information about these repos is stored. So let's look at that directory. Let me bring up the terminal. So if I do a pwd, as you can see, this is the directory. It's under etc directory, and the directory is called yum.repos.d. So if I do an ls, you can see all your repositories listed in here. You can also run a command called yum space repo list to see all repos that are on your system or the system knows about. So let me bring up the terminal. Let's run this command. Yum repo list. So right now it's showing us all these repositories that the system knows about. Some of these we are using when we install some software. These are the repositories your system knows about currently. If I needed to install a repository, I can also use yum to install the repository. For example, yum install epel-release. I think I already have it installed, but it'll give us a message. It'll go search for the repositories to see if this will be installed. As you can see, it's saying package epel release 7-11 no arch already installed and latest version. So if you wanted to install this, you can run this command and install this repository. And there's also a yum.com file under etc directory where it stores the configuration file. Let's look at the contents of etc yum.repos.d. So let's do an ls on that directory. I'm already in that directory, so if I do an ls, these are all the repositories that are listed in here. Now let's run another command. Let's grep for enabled equals to 1, and let's search in all these repositories. So all these repositories contain certain information. For example, it knows when you try to install a software where to go online and check which mirror and how to install that particular software. There is also a line in all these repositories that say enabled is equal to 1. If any of these repositories are enabled, meaning if when you install software, it will look in these repositories and it's enabled, then it will have a line in there that says enabled is equal to 1. If it says enabled is equal to 0, that means that repository is disabled. So let's search for enabled is equal to 1 in all these files to see which repository is enabled, which one are we using currently. So the command I'm typing is grep enabled is equal to 1, and we're searching in ***, which means search in all these files. So if I hit enter, as you can see, there's a repository called epel.repo, and it has a setting enabled is equal to 1, and that's the only line that grep found. That means out of all these repositories, only one of them has this line. So only one line is in there that says enabled is equal to 1, which means only this repo is being used right now when we install any particular software. So let's look at that file. So as you can see, there's many lines in there. So for example, there's a repo here. It's pointing to a particular link and it's enabled is equal to 0, meaning this one is not being used. Again, there's another line in here which is enabled is equal to 0, that means this one is not being used either. This one says enabled equals 1. That means this one is being used. There's a link for it and it points to a particular place which we will cover shortly. But as you can see right here, when you see enabled is equal to 1, that means this is the repository which we are using when we install any software right now. So when you look at that repo, it will have a lot of information in there. For example, it will tell you the name of the repository. It will tell you the base URL. This is the base URL that brings you to the repository. It is commented out, usually, which ensures that only the mirrors as specified in the mirror list are used. Also, there's also a setting that says mirror list. This line refers to a location where a list of mirror servers is found. Then there's a failover method. Redundancy for repositories. If one repository fails, the other one will take over. Enable status. This indicates whether this repository is on or off. There's also a GPG configuration. To check the integrity of software packages, GPG key is equal to will have a 1 or a 0. There's also an indication of what GPG key to use. If it's a 0, then it won't be checking it. So let's look at that file to see all these settings. So let me do a head -n to look at the first 7 lines of that file. So the repository that we have currently enabled right now is epel.repo. So if I hit enter, it will show us the first 7 lines. So right here, that's the name, epel. Next one is the base URL. So this is the base URL, and also part of the name is right here. It tells you it's called the extra package for Enterprise Linux 7. And base URL, this is the base URL. And then you have a meta link which points to mirrors. So these are the mirrors where it looks at, and they're all pointing to certain links where you can download the software from. And then we have a failover method, and also its priority. So what it does, if this repo fails or certain link fails, then it goes to a different one as long as this setting is set in there. Also, enabled is equal to 1, meaning this repository is enabled. So when we install software, currently we can use this repo. If it's at 0, then it would not use it. GPG check checks the integrity of the file or the software package, and if it's 0, then it will not check it. So these are some of the settings you will find in a repo. So once again, if you do a pwd here, this is the place where you will find your repos, mostly in CentOS Linux. So it's etc yum.repos.d, and currently we have one repo that's active or on. And when you cat that file or when you cat that repo, you can see all these settings in there. And this way you can get an idea of which repo is enabled, which one is disabled. And that's a basic introduction to repositories. I hope you learned something useful in this lecture as well, and I'll see you in the next one.